The new report cards will look like these samples. Schools will receive an overall A through F grade based on how well students perform in 4 categories. 33% of the grade is based on school performance, 17% on overall student growth, another 17% on bottom quartile student growth, and the final 33% of the grade is made up from community school participation. Subsets of each category are also graded.
So you can easily look at the report card and say, oh, well, my school is doing very well in reading and mathematics, but maybe not so well in writing or not so well in social studies.
Meredith McBee is the Assistant Superintendent of Accountability and Assessment at the State Department of Education.
The thing that is different this year is that all subject areas are now included in performance. Before, we only looked at reading and math, so this is a different way for schools to be graded. And for some, it took them aback.
Last year, the legislature passed a law requiring A through F grading of public schools. This month, the State Board of Education approved rules for how grades will be calculated. Before the new rules were announced, many school administrators expressed skepticism about the need for letter grades and strong concern that the new system would result in lots of schools receiving Fs. Stephen Crawford is the executive director of COSA, the Cooperative Council of School Administrators.
This bill that passed that required the scoring of A to F was not a administrator-driven or school board-driven piece of legislation. It comes from the overall national agenda on improving schools. Many of us in the administrative level would feel that it's probably not necessary and not as simplifying as it was intended to be. But at the same time, we're not afraid of letter grades on schools. We are more interested in the inner workings of the rules that accompany the language of the bill.
Tulsa Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Keith Ballard has been an outspoken critic of using letter grades to express how well a school performs.
I question the motive behind an A through F grading system. I question the philosophy of how we motivate people that I believe is behind that system, and I think it's a pretty simplistic system, and it's the desire of some people to hang a grade on schools, and I question the wisdom of that. Is the motive really to get schools to improve, or is it to shame public education?
To gauge whether lots of schools would receive failing grades under the new system, the State Department of Education ran a simulation as soon as the rules for determining grades were finalized. That simulation used last year's school information.
It turned out that we had 60% of schools get A's or B's, so the majority got A's or B's, 30% got C's, only 8% got D's, and 2% F's. So the fear that many schools would be rated as F, it's not going to be the case. The way that the grades are calculated, there is no constraint that there need to be any F's. If schools perform, everybody could make an A. There is not any need for a certain percent to make a certain grade.
School administrators haven't been the only ones to question how the new system will affect students and schools. The State Department of Education has heard from lots of parents.
In the growth component, one of the challenges that we had people express was, what if your student comes to you and they're already performing well? They don't have room for growth because they're already at the top of the scale. And the way that growth is calculated, those students, if they maintain their standing at the top of the scale, they still get counted as growth. So that was not a fear that materialized.
Representative Gus Blackwell represents the Panhandle. He's concerned about possible effects of the new grading system.
The one thing I'm worried about, especially small rural schools that I represent, I think a lot of times aren't going to have the means or the opportunities to provide some of those incentives to raise their scores. I know that a lot of times they're not going to be able to have advanced placement. They're not going to be able to have some of the other things that a large school might be able to do and enable them to get an A.
They wouldn't be penalized because everybody has the opportunity to do concurrent enrollment through the many schools across the state in the Oklahoma higher education system. Also, because of virtual classes, all students have the chance to take an AP class, even if they're the only one in their school who is taking that course.
School administrators, lawmakers, and the Department of Education all say they're willing to give the new law a chance, but they believe it will need tweaking in coming years if it's to achieve its intended goal of helping ensure Oklahoma's children receive a high-quality education.